One of the overarching themes of camp to this point, undeniably, has been the physicality. I mean, it is Nate Hobbs. We've spent so much time talking about. Then we had the
Hmm.
incident and the subsequent take a lap, uh, like you were coaching Green Bay Southwest High School, and there was a little bit of a melee,
Yep.
um, and the bonding that occurred because of it. But it's fascinating to me, and Goody kind of started it when he spoke on Tuesday and basically said, "Look, we feel we want to be a certain kind of football team that we think can have success in the playoffs, and that's a physical one. And if we're being honest, and Tausch has said this a bunch, that loss to Philly in the playoff game left a mark because I think they feel like they were thoroughly out physicaled in that game." And so it led to changes on the offensive line. It has led to this emphasis on physical play. And what it has also has led to is kind of an unintended consequence are some situations early in camp where guys have crossed the line and there's been issues. And so I wanted to get to this. We'd heard Matt LaFleur talk about it. We'd heard Goody. I wanted to hear what Rich Bisaccia, who's coached in the league forever, and Adam Stenovich said to this. So let's start with my question to Rich Bisaccia and how he framed the physicality of this training camp thus far.
Hey, Rich, you've done this for a long time. You've been a head coach before. Goody was talking yesterday about how you guys want to be a specific type of team and physicality is part of it. You know Nate Hobbs from your time with the Raiders. What has the first weekend change been like with the physicality and finding the line between trying to become the team you guys want to be physically and taking care of each other? Because I don't remember a time where it's been a little bit of a struggle to find that line like this.
Yeah, I think it has to start with, Coach LaFleur. I think we sit down, we watch the film of every game last year. We all go through, what are our pluses, what are our minuses, and how we can improve, obviously, as a team. And I think, what Coach has done and what he's instituted is, how we're going to practice and the physicality in which we're going to practice. Now, we're going to do that within the realm of the rules and in the realm of taking care of each other. But we are in training camp. It was very early in pads. Things get a little bit chippy, and so I think we would rather have to pull back. I think every coach would probably say that than have to push, right? And I think that's where yesterday led us to as the day went on. And I compliment Coach and the way he's pushed us in the offseason to look at things that we need to get better at, and each position for us and each group for us, how we can all get better. And I think yesterday was a little bit of what we want it to look like. And, at the end, Coach let them know where the line was and when we crossed the line, and what the next padded practice should look like. So I compliment Coach and the way he approached it with us in the offseason to start with. And now the mentality for us is we got to help his vision, come true in practice so that the games can be a little bit different, leaning towards our side.
So, John, my question for you is when you watch this team and you obviously watch the playoff game, there's no denying that this is an emphasis. Bisaccia just said so. Did you watch them thinking these guys got the crap kicked out of them by the Eagles? They are not physical enough. Was that one of your takeaways as well?
I thought other than, the turnovers is always the easiest thing to point
Mhm.
to. But I thought there were several games where they just, yeah, they got kind of, I don't know necessarily mauled, but they did not look like they were the more aggressive team or the tougher team. And that is, I always say, it's kind of like I always go back to the hockey example, right? You never hear a hockey coach ever when they say what happened. They never talk about anything other than we didn't work hard enough. Like that's the explanation for everything in a hockey game. We didn't work hard enough. We just didn't give the effort. We weren't tough enough. We didn't take the body. And I think that defines football as well. There's a lot to 3 yards in the cloud of dust. There's a reason that all your offensive linemen that you work with want to run block over pass block and all those other things. And yeah, I thought they were not the tougher team. And on top of that, I thought I'd gone over this with Homer. on top of not just what appearing to feel like, because it's hard to take those guys and go, you're not tough enough, right? Like you've seen that sport. It's hard, right? Guys on
Mhm.
Tuesday walk around in their boot and their neck brace and their crutches, and they're probable. And then they show up on Sunday. So I'm trying not to get away to say they're not tough, but they don't ever seem like they're a nasty team. Right? Like, I don't know, when you got a guy down and you rub some dirt in his face or something, they just never seem like they have this nasty streak. And I
Mhm.
think listening to Goody, right? Like that is, I mean, he said it pretty much out loud, right? That's calling your team out, dude. You are not physical enough. You are not nasty enough, which is
Right.
a pretty bold pronouncement, don't you think?
Very much
For that
so.
guy to make. And so I would think it's out there. And then I very much agree with Bisaccia. I would much rather have to pull somebody back. You know, it's like when I tell people all the time, write more than you need. It's way easier to take it out than come back and put it back in and make it fit and do all those other things. And
Mhm.
so that we have a bit of a casualty with Lynch. Like that to me is some of the price of doing business if you're going to be what you want to be. And for years, they did 2 days, 2 days, and it was padded practices, and you had Oklahoma drills and all this other stuff. And I don't know that there were appreciably more injuries than there are now when you try to be cautious. In fact, I think there are times the caution gets in the way of what's happening. It's kind of the old John Madden, right? Either get into
Mhm.
the pile or get away from it. But if you kind of dance around it, you're going to be in trouble. Um, so I wouldn't be particularly upset. I guess, LaFleur really really dressed him down about what happened there, which is, I wonder if that is him trying to show he's involved, right? Like
Yep.
that he's going to be just as mean and nasty as they are. I'm curious to see if that sells. I'm curious to your thought on that because you're around him and have been since he showed up. But that seems a little bit of a departure for him as well when it
Yeah.
comes through. But I do think, yeah, that's a team. They need to be way nastier than as a group than they were before. I'm not saying they're polite. And I also made mention of this before because you can be West Coast offensive guys and do all that other stuff and be mean and nasty. Those 49er teams under Bill Walsh, for as smart as Bill Walsh was and the genius in their finesse, dude, Ronnie Lott and those guys on the defensive line with Fred Dean or Charles Haley, or you go back to the offensive line, those guys were like what does Dylan said? They were like they were born in a hurricane with a snake in each fist. And so that's, that doesn't preclude, just because you may run more screen passes or rhythm throws, doesn't mean you can't be nasty up front. And I think that's right. The Packers have to do that. The Lions clearly have that, and it comes from their head coach, though it seems a bit more organic coming from him than it does Matt.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't. I'd be curious if because I said this to Jen Gave and Chewy this morning. My bias of boy, that was really neat that all those guys ran with Sheed.
Yeah,
I took the story that angle, and I think there is the question to be asked of because Rasheed Walker's reaction, which I did include in my story, uh, to being told to take a lap of what? It was like
yeah,
that face that it was like that face that Steph Curry made to LeBron during the finals. Remember that like 6 or 7 years ago? Like, what are you yelling at me for? Like,
yeah,
um, I do wonder if those guys, while they were running, were turning. Can you believe he told us to take a lap? What is
right.
this, high school?
Yeah,
So I don't know about that, but I did not focus on that. All right, you just said the perfect segue though to what Adam Stenovich had as his answer to my question because look, they have revamped their offensive line. Look, say what you want about how much they try to give away um, Sean Ryan's job. I mean, they're always looking to replace him, and it appears they're always looking to replace Rasheed Walker. But Sean Ryan is nasty, and not just because he uses the F word every fifth word when I talk to him. He plays with an edge. They got Aaron Banks because he's a big bad dude, right? They wanted a bigger. They moved Elton to center instead of bringing back Josh Myers because they wanted I mean, another guy that can be nasty. We've seen it. He got into it. He has the guts to get into it with Aaron Donald. He ain't afraid of nobody. And I wondered if they viewed this physicality as something they needed to start with their offensive line. So Adam Stenovich, the offensive coordinator, but former offensive line coach, felt like the perfect person to ask.
We've spent a lot of time talking about physicality this camp. I'm curious for your guys, especially up front. Was there an off-season feeling of, after the way things went in Philly or the way Detroit plays, we need to be more physical?
Yeah, I think, anytime, you get to those playoffs, you get to that position, however you are, where you're at is going to get exposed. And I think that's one thing we talked about, and one thing, we're going to focus on is making sure we're the most physical football team on the field when we go out there and play. That's going to be a big thing for us. So, yes.
And I love Steno, and I hope the competition line about Zach Tom and some other things he said do not prevent him from being as open and honest as he is, because he is honest. And he just used a word that tells you what they think: exposed. Right? He thinks they got exposed. They think as a team that they got exposed by the Eagles as not being the more physical team. And John, that's his again, he's not the offensive line coach, but that's his background. He played that position in the league. It's pretty clear to me that they feel like that's the place that it's got to start. You always want your defense to be physical. They did sign Nate Hobbs for that reason. But on offense, yeah, that's great. They got a great scheme, and Matt LaFleur is a smart guy. But you hear it with Homer when you sit with him every Tuesday. They need to be more physical offensively, and it starts with those guys up front, doesn't it?
Well, and that's don't you think of all the things you can be called, that's the most insulting thing in football, is that, oh my gosh, you weren't tough enough or you weren't physical enough. Like, that is just the worst insult of, that. And of course your mama jokes, but beyond that, that's like the worst thing that you can do, right? Okay, you turn it over. Well, we can work on ball security. We can, there are a lot of other aspects that define winning and losing, but the one that would insult people the most is that, like, you guys just, the other team was tougher than you, because that's the worst admission that can happen. So I think if they are willing to say that publicly, both Goody and then what Stenovich said, then they're getting an earful behind closed door in meeting rooms and stuff, right? That's being preached. I don't know that that's how they write it on the whiteboard when they go out, but that's got to be. I don't know if they've painted any new signs that you can see along with their play like a champion today, but that they've got to be worn out. Which is, by the way, in some part why you got to look at LaFleur like, wait a minute, you give me a lap and I'm doing exactly what you want me to do, right? Like, at some point,
great point.
Right? At some point, does LaFleur go, when he gets back and he goes, was that great or what? That's what we needed. So a little of that, I'm not really sure why he then suddenly condemned that when that appears to be the exact thing they were looking for. And I do think, there's no question when they were jogging that somebody had to say something like, what the hell is this? Like, we've got to be, I don't know if they discussed, where they were going after practice. Or who's got a date for prom yet, but I'm sure that it was quite the thing. But to have those two guys, as you said, because offensive line coaches are always offensive line coaches. Like, it never ends. They're the guys that are always seem to be, I don't know Stenovich well, but some of the guys that I used to be around, whether it was college guys, Carl Mock with the Cardinals was an all-timer about that, And Carl Mark, there were times he was like, let me show you how you do it. And I'm just here in my bike coach's shorts and I don't have a helmet, but I'm willing to go just pound into whoever the defensive tackle is to show you how it's done. So guys like Steno, you said, that's his DNA. That's never going to go away and how he feels it. So maybe that's a plus that's the guy in that coordinator position. But if I were those guys, I would do the same. I'm like, if this is what you're asking for on both sides, I'd go until they got to pull me off somebody, And then at some point, if it gets bad, because you're adults, I would say, so what do you want? Where's, how much is enough? Because I don't think you can just show up on the Jets game in the preseason or even week one and just conjure that up, And I think they've shown that with how poorly they've played in the first game. We've talked about that before. Like you can't just, okay, here it is. I guess now we'll be physical. I think you got to have some of the bruises and the welts on you before you ever get into the regular season.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder what they're going to do from a preseason perspective. If this is because, look, to your point, and I think you're 1,000% right. You preach this, you have to know that guys are going to go too far, right? And I think maybe it's a little bit out of Matt's comfort zone that they're being this physical, because I think he does. Homer says it all the time. He's smart more than tough. That's his mentality. That's what he believes in philosophically, and I don't blame him for that. But if you're going to be constantly harping on the importance of being physical, don't be surprised when guys are too physical.
Right.
Right? That's the
what is
the
too
law of
physical? Until the flag comes out, I don't know what too physical is.